Hi everyone, today we're going to be looking at equity theory, so another theory of how we maintain a relationship. So we've already looked at filter theory, which includes it, and also set, so social exchange theory, which includes maintenance. So equity is a bit different from set in that it says it's all about the perception of fairness rather than actually being equal. So as long as we perceive it to be fair, a relationship to be fair, then we will maintain a relationship. And that's because we are inherently subjective people, and therefore we can't ever be truly sure if it's fair, but as long as we feel like it's fair, then that's all that matters. So it's not about it being equal, but it's about the relationship being fair, and therefore you're getting still more rewards than costs. So as I said before, set says that it's about a series of different behaviours and we weigh up the benefits and costs, but equity is about people striving for perceived fairness, so assuming that it is fair in their relationship, what they do. And it's definitely not about equality. So set was all about it being equal. So like you got more profits than costs, and that was like that is equal. But equity is more about whether something is fair or not. So you might put less into a relationship, but if you're also getting less out of it, then it's still fair and equitable, even if it's not equal. Like you're getting less out, and therefore you're not equal. Like you're not balanced in the amount that effort you're putting in. So it might mean, for example, like if one of you has a job that means that you work really long hours, then the other person might do all the housework or do all the cooking, and that isn't equal, but it is fair because that person has more time to do it. They might have a better headspace to do it as well, and they might not have to work, say like at weekends or something, or at the time at which you might need to like cook dinner. So it's fair, but it's not equal, and that's what equity theory is about, it being fair and being perceived as fair. So there is a mathematical equation for this, and it's basically if person's A's benefits minus their costs are equal to the person's B's benefits minus their costs, then it is fair or perceived to be fair. Okay, you don't need to know this in too much detail. They won't ask you a specific question on it, but it is just interesting to know that it can be mathematically worked out because it is an economic theory. So according to equity theory, we maintain a relationship through it being balanced and stable. Okay, we don't want it to be inequitable, but we don't mind that if it's not equal. Okay, and there are several things we can do if we recognise that our relationship is inequitable and we want it to become more equitable. But obviously, the more inequitable it is, the more effort we have to put in order to make sure that it is helpful and that that the relationship is maintained. So if we're feeling happy, then that normally means that our relationship is equal. But if we're feeling guilty, then it means that we're over benefiting from our relationship, i.e. we're getting a lot out of it, but we're not putting as much in as we should do. And if we're angry or frustrated, that's normally because you're putting a lot of effort into a relationship, but you're not actually getting a lot out of it. So it's all again about equity or inequity in a relationship. So what do we do if a relationship is inequitable? There are three things. You can put more effort into the relationship if you're not putting enough in the first place, and that would go with the feeling guilty about it, so you're over benefiting but you're not actually getting a lot out of the relationship. So you're going to put more effort in, like you try harder, you might cook more dinners, or like try and do the housework, or like you pay for the meal this time. Or you can change the amount that they demand from it. So if you think that they are like, if you think you're demanding too much from a relationship, like you're asking them to do all the housework or them to always pay for the meals, you can say, okay, maybe I shouldn't demand as much from this relationship. Or a bit more sneakily, you can just change their perception of it. You can make it seem like you actually do loads of work. Like I do all the housework. I've done it loads of times. Like I did it last week, for example. And you can make it sound like you actually put a lot of effort into it, and they're wrong. They're not seeing it, like their perception is incorrect. So those are the three ways that we can maintain a relationship. So A key study then is by Stafford and Canary, and basically they asked 200 married couples to complete several different questionnaires on relationship satisfaction and their equity. So they were going to compare how satisfied they were in a relationship with how equitable they perceived the relationship to be. So they asked them lots of different things about how much household work that each of them do, how much positive communication they have with each other, etc. And they basically found that people who perceived their relationship to be equitable were the people who were more satisfied. And that makes sense because we're saying that equitable relationships maintain a relationship. And it also says that if we felt that we were treated equitably, we were also more happy. So again, that supports the idea of equity theory. However, there are many problems with the study. First of all, it's a self-report measure, and that always means there's going to be some social desirability bias. We're assuming that relationships are all about that we want our relationship to be perceived as good, and that might not actually be the case. And also, the couple were asked to give ratings on positivity, and as well as other measures that are very subjective. And again, with anything in relationships, it's really difficult to objectify some of the concepts within relationships that we're talking about, some of these profits and costs. And that means that it's really difficult to make sure that we have objective and therefore valid measures. So in terms of evaluation, we need to have some strengths and some weaknesses. So the first one here is talking about the fact that researchers found that not everyone is equally sensitive to inequity. So some people really don't recognise inequity in their relationships, and some people try and get the most out of their relationship whilst putting the least in, and those relationships are still maintained. So basically there are different types of people, there are individual differences, and this theory might not apply to everyone. Secondly, there's a lot of supporting evidence, but a lot of it comes from animal studies about them perceiving non-romantic relationships, but more like friendships, as inequitable or equitable. And there's a lovely study on monkeys, and they found that in monkeys, if they perceived the relationship to be inequitable, then the relationship became unsteady, and they used to throw things at the researchers to show their discontent. And then finally, there are also cultural differences in the maintenance of relationships. So some cultures are collectivist cultures are more likely to be happy when they're over benefiting, whereas individualist cultures want it to be more equitable. I hope that was helpful.